Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. My name is Steve McManaman. In this week's episode, we're going to catch up with Binju. We're going to talk about steps 4 and 5 to the correct steps with building a brand new home. We're also going to catch up with one of our mortgage brokers and hear from him about what's going right in the industry, what's also going wrong, and his thoughts on interest rates and where it's going to go. We'll also be covering in our feature story an incredible story about a mother and a son. The mother's a passionate broker and her steps that she took to create wealth and help clients across all Australia. And she's now encouraged her son to purchase up to his third property right now. He's only 19 years of age. And finally, our Q&A session. We're going to hear from our audience members about what's pressing them, what's driving them, and some of the questions they want answered in the New Property Show. Last week we covered steps 1, 2 and 3 in terms of the building process, getting a fixed price contract, the work that you need to do in terms of talking to the bank, and of course getting developer approval. What we want to talk about in steps 4 and 5 is really what happens on the on-site process. So do you mind just taking us through, I guess day one, we've gone to site, what's next?
So as soon as we receive the permits, the first step for us would be to do a site assessment to just make sure if there is any rubbish on the ground or if there's grass grown on the site. If such is the case, we would ask the customer to get it all cleared up so our team can go out and carry on the next steps. The very first step after that would be to put up the fences, toilets and crossovers. Once that is done, the site excavators would go on the site, and then if your slab has board piers in them, then that would be followed. And once all of that is cleared, we are ready for slab pour. And mind you, the weather is a bit tricky as well in Melbourne, so we have to take that into consideration as well when we pour the slab.
So you mean that tradies don't work 7 days a week?
Not really, no. That's the myth that I think the customers expect, that regardless of the weather, I want my site to be worked upon 7 days a week.
I've built a few houses and I found that myself and my partner, we used to just drive past the place daily and we get excited if even the water tap had turned up.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a slab pour. What's next?
So next is the frame stage. That is the second part of your progress stage. We at Nanche Group have the option to either do a timber frame or a steel frame as well. Essentially, framing is just putting up the roof trusses, the ceiling panels and the walls of your house, and once that is inspected and approved, we can move on to the next stage, which is the lock-up stage.
Perfect. So I've typically worked with builders in the past that have used really predominantly timber frames.
Yes.
Now I know during some some sort of shortages during COVID also, there were some challenges there. What do you feel the advantages with the steel frame versus timber?
First of all, steel provides a lot more of the warranty, which is a 50-year manufacturer warranty if it's from BlueScope, which is the one that we use. And secondly, it's more sturdier than timber, easy to get inspections done, because if there are any corrections to be done, because it's machine produced, it's easier to install as well.
Really
That's some advantages with the steel. And finally, I think it's the earthing that helps with the steel frames.
What's earthing?
When the electricity, it's a conductor, so it would go right in the ground, so more fire resistant as well.
Perfect. Okay, so we're up to lockup.
Yeah.
Next step is lockup. So what does lockup mean? So I just think of a door on the front. We tick the box, we get the invoice in.
Yes.
But what else does that involve?
Main part of lockup would be the bricks.
Yeah.
So essentially your bricks are done, your doors are just put in there, and windows in some cases. So just the exterior of the house with the roof on top, that's locked up.
Do you mind if I ask, so there's a lot of different, we talked about facades earlier, and want to talk about, I guess, Vic's bricks versus rendered finish. Is there any other materials that you're seeing that are really sort of starting to come onto the market now? There are alternatives to bricks.
I have seen builders used Hebel. We as construction group have not ventured into it yet because we're happy with bricks and render for now, and the customers do like it. But I have seen Hebel coming up a lot.
Okay, so we've gone to lockup, we've covered slab, frame, lockup. After that, what happens
Next stage is the fixing.
Okay.
So this is where we will put the plasters, we'll get the stone measurements, essentially all the rooms, robes and everything is just, structure is built internally, and once that is done, we can move on to the final.
That includes kitchen, vanities, drawers, showers, baths.
Correct.
So that's all included.
Yes.
Okay, and then I guess things like appliances and dishwashers and those external fittings, they come later, is that right?
We have noticed that for security purposes, we would do the installations of the appliance on the day of handover, because unfortunately the situation is that it gets stolen. Everything, even sometimes a nail box can get stolen. So because appliances are an expensive product, we would let them be towards the day of handover.
Perfect. Okay. Now, on I guess pre-handover or handover, what is fitted on the day of handover or 7 days beforehand? What does the customer need to do then so they can make sure they've got the final payment in place, they've got the insurance in place? I guess that's the most exciting part of the journey is the walkthrough.
Yes.
Tell us about what happens on that day.
So yes, the supervisor will do a walkthrough with you. You can identify all the inclusions are done as per your selections. You can identify if the rooms and everything is as per the drawings as well. And if there are any defects, the supervisor will of course note it down. And then upon the day of handover, these defects or corrections are then forwarded within your maintenance list. Every construction group will have a certain period of maintenance. We offer a 3-month maintenance period. So after that period, whatever defects are there, builder will rectify those.
Perfect. Now, last but not least, is there anything that you would advise clients to consider when building a brand new home at the moment? Is there a couple of, and I guess we'll cover it in some of the other episodes moving forward, but is there anything else that you think that should be included in a brand new home?
Well, my director and me believe that cover as much of the internals as much as you can during the construction. Things such as landscaping and fencing, you can leave it for later. The problem with landscaping and fencing is that builders who usually offer these things, they do not themselves do it. They will hire a third party to get this done. So you can save costs there, avoid the builder margins on landscaping, and with fencing, because you share the cost with your neighbors, there might be a chance that by the time you move in, the neighbors would have already done the fencing. So avoid those costs within your contracts. Stuff which is structural, essential to the house, get that done during the construction.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to hearing more from the Najee Group moving forwards.
Absolutely.
And we can't wait to check out some of your houses on site.
Pleasure.
I'm here with Caleb from Jacques Financial Group. He's come all the way down from Queensland. Mate, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's been beautiful. There's nothing quite like Melbourne. Historic town, historic city, so it's been beautiful sightseeing.
You're predominantly focusing on the new home construction industry. What is that looking like at the moment? So Queensland, a lot of talk of the town. Obviously up there with your feet on the ground. What's happening with first home buyers, investors and owner occupiers?
Yeah, look, I'd say there's a bit of nervousness around the industry, obviously with what's happened in the past with builders, particularly in Queensland space, but there's still a lot of activity. We're seeing still a lot of buyers come to the market, and that's because everyone hates renting. And that's the biggest issue in this country at the moment, is that people want to quit renting. The best way to do that is get into your own home. And there's so many, like we spoke about before, so many different options that you can do to do that, whether it's through government grants, whether it's through taking advantage of high LVR construction loans as well, and second tier lenders that offer non-gen savings and things like that for policies.
So what's a non-gen saving? What's that look like?
So you can use things like gift from mum and dad, guarantor, there's a couple of other different options, whether it's rebates from land and things like that as well. You can use all sorts of different lenders. It depends on who the lender is and what you're looking to purchase.
And are you seeing, I guess, a lot of people trying to buy now, or are they waiting, maybe putting a deposit on the land, securing the land and then picking a builder later? What's happening, I guess, with how people are building?
I think a lot I see with both the contracts at the same time, purely because people now more than ever want to make sure they can afford both. You know, we've just gone through 7 rate rises, so people are nervous. They're nervous about their money. They're nervous what they can buy and what they can afford. So they're being smart about it, and they're wanting to organise both at the same time. If that means they purchase land and it's quite a while from titling, maybe getting a quote from the builder, something based on 7 or 12 months pricing time, and then sort of waiting until they do those contracts until then for the build.
I guess the question that does come up, I'm going to ask you, have you seen many contracts ripped up? Sunset clauses, price rises, price increases. We're trying to cover absolutely everything on the show. We want to ask the things that don't get spoken about. And it was actually come from one of our audience members. What happens if a contract gets ripped up? What's happening there?
Yeah, so especially in recent months, seen some real ugly situations happen. I had one client go through 3 builders collapse in the point of time with his land. He was unconditional on the land as well, so we had to organise that as quickly as possible. luckily found his fourth builder, went through unconditional on everything now, and he's going to settle in a couple of weeks' time. So it's a good news story. There's others where, customers lucky enough to find a townhouse in North Brisbane for $440 2 years ago. It's not built, so they have to wait around. And then as soon as the valuations is ready, because they were sitting around for 2 years, no one had anything organised, they had their contract ripped up in front of them because they couldn't go unconditional in a week. So, and that was just a situation where she lost the contract, she lost 50% of her deposit, can't get any of it back, unfortunately.
Thank you for coming on to the New Property Show.
Thanks.
Look forward to seeing you back here soon. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you.
So we're back here with Jamal from FinPlus. Welcome aboard to the New Property Show.
Thank you, Steve. Nice
you.
to be here.
What are some tips that you're giving to, I guess, these friends and family behind the scenes?
Yeah.
To get their money under control. So
Well,
what,
I mean,
what do they need to do first?
The thing is, people want to have these huge deposits saved. As a first home buyer, both the kids have gone into their first properties with $20,000, $25,000 of savings. It doesn't take a huge amount. The government's got so many grants and things that are available, and obviously having good financial advisors and brokers that you tap into, and people like yourself that know, okay, this would be a property that would be eligible for first home buyers grant, for house and land grant, and then on top of that you've got the
Low deposit scheme?
Yeah, first home loan deposit scheme. Now with that, obviously the government pays for your LMI as well as you're not paying any stamp duty.
And
so
for the
which
people
means
listening, sorry, LMI, what does that stand for?
LMI is your lender's mortgage insurance. So
Yeah.
any loan over an 80% lend, and some lenders have taken that to 85% and stuff, but any loan that's over an 80% lend needs lender's mortgage insurance. Now some banks disguise that and call it a risk fee, but really it's the same thing. It's the bank's assurance against somebody who hasn't got as much equity in their property.
So how much time should people invest in getting educated in the market? Where would they go to? What book should they read? And who should they see for their finance?
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of them. Like there's the Diamond Bolts and Mark Roltons and all that sort of stuff that are the gurus. Yourself, I mean, you've got so much great advice. Never stick to one. Get a really good flavour from all of them and what they're all saying, because at the end of the day the essence should be the same in all of them. The thing is, like, I had so many people 10 years ago come to me and they had 20 or 30 different accounts. And when you're trying to give the bank 6 months of bank statements on 20 or 30 different accounts, and all of the accounts had next to nothing in it, those algorithms are now going to be a detriment. The reason they had 20 or 30 different accounts is because the barefoot investor decided to tell them all to get different accounts for different things. But the problem with those sorts of things is that internet banking allows us very quickly to switch money from one account to the other because there's not enough money in that one, and that's supposed to be the car account, but I need money for that, and and it just doesn't work. Don't take one person and just follow that advice. Get yourself a really eclectic view of finances, but it's also understanding the terminologies. You talked about LMI, for example, lender's mortgage insurance. Understand what that is. How can I get away from that? What can I do? But if I'm on a really high salary, how's that going to benefit me from my tax returns? And then don't just see a property person, see an accountant. See a financial advisor. And a lot of financial advisors are going to say, oh, spread your portfolio, make sure you've got shares and make sure. The long and short of it has always been the stability of property.
I think the biggest thing that we talk about really is bricks and mortar.
Totally.
The ability to see a physical product. Sure enough, you may not be able to liquidate it immediately, but you're not stuck to the condition of the market. And property, I think, in a long-term goal has always gone up.
Always. Well,
and-
I mean, if you look
yeah.
at the last 100 years in Australia and you look at the stats, in your metro areas, in all your major cities, well, Melbourne, Sydney especially, properties have increased in value, doubled in value every 10 years. Full stop, bar none. Yeah? So which means if you take, okay, they might have gone down a bit when things were bad and stuff, but if you take an average for the last 100 years, properties have doubled in value every 10 years. With that in mind, it is a long and short of it. You should never put yourself in a position where you are going to need to offload something quickly. If you can have financial security, that also means having $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 sitting in an offset account, so it's working for you, but having a few months of payments from all of your accounts always sitting there means you've got that kind of
I
security
think the
behind
most
you.
important part of that team then is building, obviously, we talked about building the team, but you're not just a broker, you're a broker that cares, which obviously this is hence, as I said, welcome to the show. We've done a lot of business together. We're going to continue to do that, and I guess that's because we work hand in hand. No one's right or wrong, but at the end of the day, as long as the client's winning, it's the most important thing. Jamal, I want to say thank you so much for jumping on today.
You're most welcome,
Look
Steve.
forward to having you back in future episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Cheers.
Steve.
Hi panel, my name is Irshad and I have a question for you. We earlier discussed cash flow versus capital gain or capital growth. As Emmanuel, you said you love it, cash flow versus the capital growth, but when it comes to investing or buying a property where the capital growth is good or cash flow is greater, then when it comes to building a portfolio, which one will help faster for someone to reach the next property?
My personal opinion, I think cash flow, because without cash flow, you're not making as much income. And if you're going to be buying a property that's going to be providing you more growth and you have to fork out money out of your pay every week, that's going to decrease your serviceability. Therefore, it's going to be hard to borrow money from banks.
But it is hard to get both at the same time. So let's say someone is getting just the cash flow higher, but there is no capital growth, meaning he won't have equity enough for the next home deposit. So he has to use his cash flow. Might be cash flow not enough to pay the deposit.
Sometimes it's hard to get both, but you just got to be smart with the property that you buy. Maybe you buy a property with high cash flow and it's got a big enough block of land, get it DA'd and build a unit in there, and the bank can value it as a house with a DA in the back, which will obviously increase your potential to be able to borrow additional funds. That's one way, but there's multiple ways out there.
Just going to add to that just quickly, is it depends on the individual. It actually doesn't depend on the question itself, whether it's capital growth or cash flow. The question really is what do you need more of at the time when you're doing each individual deal? So the answer, therefore, in the experience that I've had, would be you do one capital growth, one cash flow. One capital growth, one cash flow. If your cash flow is down, two cash flow, one capital growth. So it really needs to be a seesaw because each impact each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question.
Panel, my name's Charlie. I guess me and my mate, we're both 19, very new to the whole real estate investment sort of aspect of life. It's very basic. I just love one point from each of yous. What's the biggest thing you've learned throughout your journey in investment in real estate?
Speaking to you as a human being, not as a mortgage broker, I would like to add two things. Sometimes you've got to take a bit of risk, but be responsible about it at the same time.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
My biggest mistake was that I maxed out my borrowing capacity straight away. The bank told me that I could borrow 500,000. I borrowed 500,000, got the property bug, couldn't borrow any more money until I earned enough money to be able to do so. So, yeah.
My answer would be pay for education. If there's property seminars or education, the biggest thing you can do is invest in your mindset and surround yourself with people that have done it, not the people at the barbecues.
Do you mind if I just jump in on that? We've actually invested in some buyer's agents, so we're in a sort of company, Maple Investing, real estate investing there, and we've built a bit of trust with them. We know the CEO, but at the same time, obviously we're new, we're vulnerable, so we don't want to be used in a way. How would you sort of go about our situation? Do you think, still be trusting, or do we sort of maybe look to a different venture, look to maybe some more opinions?
I think even myself, when I've worked with many different builders, relationships are there to be fostered, but I think the best investment there is always to have a comparison quote or an alternative. So even when I've shopped previously, I've always got a comparison quote. Even though I'm loyal to the person that I've dealt with, keeping in mind that you're not buying property, you're buying people. So I would take the CEO or the trusted advocate outside of their property environment and get to know them individually and have a beer with them because you're 19 and get to know them. If they're a good mate, buy a property from them.
I'll probably say that invest the money in educating yourself. And I know this is a bit difficult. If you're 19 and you're desperate to buy a property, I would say get a university degree, get educated. Meaning, while you're getting a university degree, you're getting education about the properties and all that. Have a good interest, but important. You know why? Because quite often a graduate, an intelligent person can always fall back and have a nice job, and also can be a great investor. So if I were you in your young age, 19, I'll possibly say, just don't temptation. If you're smart, you can be a millionaire at any age. So I think this is my personal view as a human being.
Just quickly on that, I know I'm taking up my time a bit too long. So is there other options when it comes to education rather than just going to university? Like, are there online courses, etc.? Like, that's sort of the route we're going down.
You can follow my TikTok.
TikTok?
That's free.
I would just add to that. If you really want to be in real estate, be in real estate. Be an agent, work for New Homes, get in land, stop being a spectator, and quit your job and go and work in real estate. That's the answer.
I tend to agree with what Steve says, yeah.
And I think mine would be just to know your finances. So obviously you know that you can borrow a certain amount, but sit down and do your homework. So you know that you're earning this much money, the repayments are going to be this, you know for sure that your expenses are going to be this, and that you can actually maintain it and live a life that you're still going to be happy with at the moment. Because it's worthwhile having sacrifice to get a property, sure, but not to the point of, maybe being stuck in a job that you don't want to be in anymore because your mortgage is so high that you can't look to change over or anything like that. So all I would say is make sure you've got the balance between your funds and what you actually want to do with your time and your life as well.
Great question. Thank you.
My name is Jay. I'm a magician. And my question to you is, I know a lot of performers that are trying to get their first mortgage, and the problem is with the entertainment industry, not just magicians, is that it's really hard for the banks to give them a loan because our work isn't viewed as consistent. So I was just wondering, how can we ensure the confidence in the bank, even if our work is consistent?
Really depends. What we notice, a lot of people in your industry, they claim everything is self-employed, so they would invoice if they're subcontracting, or if they're putting a hat down and they're getting cash, they'll take it. They'll be claiming that through their personal tax returns. If you can show consistent income in your personal finances, banks will lend money. It just all depends how you structure and speaking to the right broker or bank. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you, Jay. We've got one more question.
Hello, my name is Haider. I got a question for the bank. If you're using a collateral for buying a property, especially for the deposits, what are the different things we can use for a collateral, and how does the interest impact on getting the deposit on a collateral?
Yes, so a lot of lenders out there would use property as security, being residential, commercial land. Whatever it gets pulled out of as equity, you'd be paying interest against that as well. A lot of people assume that they can use cars or boats and whatnot. Most lenders these days want to actually see some sort of property as a security.
All right, thank you.
Fantastic question. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. We look forward to digging into this deeper. We'll come back to you with a complex list of what's not included. Thank you for joining us today on this episode.
Thank you.